We good to go now?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Looks like we're good.
So welcome to Financial Apps as Tools for Your Success. So we will go ahead and continue on with a brief introductions from the rest of the team.
Hello, my name is Chris Moreno. I work in Miami, Florida at this company WorkSquare, and I'm their director for social impact.
Hi everyone, this is Darren Liddell. I'm the Director of Program Innovation at the Financial Clinic. Happy to be on the call and excited to talk to you about some financial apps.
You can hear both of them.
Great. All right, well, hi everyone. My name is Jennifer Wilson, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Personal Finance Program at Texas Tech. And we would just like to say thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us. We are very excited to be here, and thanks to the Higher Education Financial Wellness team for hosting us. So we will go ahead and move forward with diving into the presentation. And just another quick reminder, to help facilitate the presentation, we're going to go ahead and postpone questions to the end. But please feel free to post them in the chat, and we'll go back to them towards the end. And if we don't get to everyone's questions, we will go ahead and we'll send out like a frequently asked question document after the presentation. And you can also have the presentation link as well. So with the financial apps for today, the overview that we're going to be talking about is just briefly going into a little bit of a study that was done a while back, and then we're going to dive into the majority of the apps that we have been looking at. So as we go through the presentation, just note that clients will also indicate what we mean as students. So I know there's different people here that are, practitioners or also from universities. So we're just going to keep it general, as clients can be either or. I primarily work more with students, and so there'll be some things that I'll highlight or emphasize in with students and some scenarios and experiences that we've had here at Tech. But this kind of slide just references that, there's no right or wrong way, that you might learn some new tools today, but you have to know that all methods are appropriate. So those methods could be, if you are working with clients and Excel is working, or they're journaling their information, or they're using the envelope system, if it's working for them and they don't feel like they want to change, then that's great. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that people are saving and monitoring their spending and reaching their financial goals. So once again, it's based on your client's values and their financial goals. A traditional method could work for your client, but maybe they're just not aware of an easier way that they could manage their finances, and this could be through using different financial apps. So, as our role as financial coaches, we're here to provide the tools and resources, but at the end of the day, it's really up to the clients if they want to use them. So there are a variety of financial apps out there. We only have a handful that we've tried out, but at the end of the presentation or throughout the presentation, if you would like to go ahead and type different kind of financial apps that you've been using that we haven't mentioned so far, we would love to kind of see everybody's perspective and what you've been using, and maybe we'll learn something new and some different apps that we could also try out as well. So, a lot of times, looking at different financial apps and what they can bring to the table is that there's so many out there now. So we've looked at some that, they involve tracking spending, looking at budgeting, banking, paying bills, debt management, savings, credit, investing, maybe including student loans in this perspective, taxes, utilizing best deals and different creative savings ideas. So before we move on, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Darren, who's going to talk a little bit more briefly about this study.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. So hello, everyone. I just wanted to give a brief bit of background about the study that we did at Catalyst Miami. In full disclosure, I used to work for Catalyst Miami, but now work for the Financial Clinic. And all of us worked at Miami at one point or another, but that's neither here nor there. So to give you guys a bit of an update, what we saw at Catalyst Miami during my time there was clients were often coming in for financial coaching and wanted a way to budget their money. They wanted a way to automate savings. They wanted a way to use technology to improve their personal finances, but didn't know which apps were the best, what would work well for them. So what we kind of saw internally was the staff was using apps personally to manage their finances, and saw, is there a way for us to kind of come to a consensus, get on the same page, and then how can we highlight those same apps to financial coaching as well as tax preparation clients? So our hypothesis was, can we use financial apps as a possibility to motivate clients and customers to change their behavior? and also to make outcome tracking easier or make another ramp for clients to get in touch with us between financial coaching meetings. So with that, I'm actually going to pass it to Chris to tell you guys a little bit more about the study.
Yeah. So I also worked at my Catalyst Miami as well. We partnered with the University of Miami to do a focus groups with our clients that we serve through financial coaching at Catalyst Miami. And then we provided surveys to evaluate their experiences with apps. We've received a lot of good feedback from those. Mainly, we realized that we wanted to focus on enhancing fintech training and support and providing more training and support for the clients. They really saw that using apps was a tool that was added to the coaching experience rather than just being a replacement for the coaching experience, which is very rewarding for us because we didn't want to be seen as the apps were taking over for financial coaching, but rather it added more to the coaching experience. And then there's a lot more that I could go through, but I don't want to take up too much time. But it really gave us the opportunity to really feel that clients do appreciate apps, and it does help them in achieving their personal financial goals. So what we did with that feedback is we were in the process of updating app developers to create feedback loops and sharing that data. And then we're always selecting apps to study more deeply. We've also worked with some chatbot features and some different programs out there, which is kind of moving away from the apps, but still applicable. And we develop a handout and guides to provide to our clients.
All right, great. So I wanted to highlight for you all a few things to keep in mind about these apps. They're distributed and owned for the most part by for-profit companies. So obviously they're trying to make money, and they usually do that through advertisements. So we usually do outline that for our customers on the apps handout that they're given. It says, these are not owned by nonprofits, they're not owned by Catalyst Miami or the Financial Clinic or any of these other organizations. Here's the best way to here are positives and negatives to keep in mind. They all do use bank level security, so they're as secure as online banking, but they usually require a login for the purposes of that automation. A majority of these apps are free, and we really wanted to highlight that because most of our clients are low income and wouldn't have the ability to pay for an app. Although there are some that are free, that are not free, that we have debated about whether to take on or off, but we'll get to that in just a little bit and the reasoning behind those. And then, and I already kind of mentioned, the apps make money by making recommendations to enroll in other products. So also making the customer aware of, tag your financial coach if you're thinking of or considering enrolling in a new project. It's a great time to engage with your financial coach. The other thing that's important is apps change and are bought. So oftentimes, it's not unusual for, actually one of the apps in the presentation today I recently learned was bought, that we'll get to in a little bit. So I'll talk to you guys about that when we go to those slides. And the last thing that's really important is we all piloted these and continue to pilot apps and have a conversation among Chris, Jennifer, and I around what we're using, what we think is best, what should we take off, and what should we update. And it's important that if you're thinking of featuring apps among your clients' use, to keep those things in mind. Oh, and one last thing, all the apps that we've selected are available for both Android and iOS because we want to be flexible for the technology that our customers are using.
So before we begin to talk about our list of apps, as Darren mentioned previously, things change, especially in the financial technology world. People are getting bought out all the time. Some start charging fees. Some we realized through testing that they were useful for clients in one way or the other, but then later on it didn't become as useful. And so here we have just a few list of apps that we saw either one of those 3-4 reasons have applied to it. So for Mint Bills and Level and Ready for Zero, those were all apps that were bought out and then just closed, or some changes happened. Support Pay, Even, and Personal Capital are still around, but they may not be useful for all clients. And then Digit, which is a savings app, started charging a fee, and so that might not necessarily be a good fit for your individual or your community. And so there's always changes going on with apps as mentioned, and so we just wanted to highlight some of our goodbye apps.
All right. So I'm going to start the presentation, talk to you all about a few money management and budgeting apps that we've been recommending and highlighting. So Mint is, of course, the most popular and one of the oldest, better known financial apps. It's really good for kind of basic budgeting, goal setting. You can automate accounts. It's really, really valuable for folks who are looking to track their transactions and what's happening there. Mint also has expanded to offer some bill tracking as well as credit scoring, which you'll see as a popular feature that's, as opposed to just focusing on budgeting and bills, many apps are trying to do many features. So there's Mint. So I won't actually go too much into that one because I think most folks may have heard of it before, but if not, it's worth checking out. The other two, though, that we're highlighting are Honeydew and Clarity Money. So Honeydew is an app that focuses on helping couples to track bills, savings, and expenses. We like this because oftentimes, not often, but occasionally customers come for couples coaching, and it can be, this is often something that causes lots of contention. So the benefit here is you can assign certain bills as well as certain account monitoring to one particular person and use the app to kind of facilitate those conversations and keep your partner accountable as well. And lastly is Clarity Money, which is an app that we recently added to the presentation because we thought that it is a really, really clean interface. It allows you to track cash and debt easily. It also incorporates savings goals in a really intuitive way and lets you monitor your progress, but also gives you the option to open a savings account via the app. And we don't recommend that feature to our customers, but it is something that is possible there. In addition to that, it does have the possibility of canceling bills or subscription services through a bot feature that they have, which is something we had featured in one of our prior apps, but we saw this app can do multiple things, which is often beneficial to customers. All right, so speaking of chatbots, so this is, there was a time maybe a year or two ago when chatbots became the it technology item, the sexy thing, if you will. And here are three of the ones that we've highlighted. The idea behind a chatbot is basically they're text-based interfaces for customers to track changes or track financial progress. And I'll give you an example of these three. So the idea behind Trim when it launched was that they would focus on monitoring your accounts. Do you have a subscription to Comcast or Spectrum? And if you do, are you open to canceling that subscription, or Netflix or Spotify, something that maybe you're not using, but it just would be a bit of a hassle to cancel? Because many of these systems have like a very unique script or a very like set script for how the cancellation process goes. The idea behind Trim is they can cancel for free, only via using a text, or potentially even reduce the fees. In addition to that, they also have some cashback deals that are also a feature of the app. Trim started out as SMS or text only, but then recently has switched to Facebook Messenger. And that's how many of these apps are in the chatbot, in terms of chatbots. The benefit to Facebook Messenger is there usually is more functionality and there's like a prettier visual interface, and customers usually enjoy that. But the text is a good fallback because everyone has text. Even if they don't have a smartphone, you still can use these chatbot apps even if your phone isn't smart, which is great. In addition to that, Change is another chatbot app that we've seen that is solely SMS based, although they did open up a Facebook Messenger app not too long ago. Very similar to Trim, but it's really more about staying on track with your spending. Have you overspent based on your behavior from the last month or the last week, and are you on track to achieve your goals? And then lastly, Penny, which lives as a full app and isn't SMS or text based, but you download the app to your phone, and then you have conversations with Penny via prompted responses. So Penny will say, "It looks like you've saved 20% more than you normally do, or you saved $10 this month. Does that sound about on track to you?" And you can say yes or no, and then it'll say, "Would you like to save more or less, or how are you on track to achieving your goals?" So Penny and many of these give really, really good nudges for saving and or debt repayment behavior.
Great. I would like to also add another comment about Penny through my experience of using it is that I really like the feature that it kind of tests you to see how much that you are aware of your current financial situation. So like, for example, she might ask, how much do you think you're spending on eating out? And you can text back a number, and then she'll instantly reply back and say, well, actually, it's been this amount. And then she'll take it to the next level and she'll text back stating, do you think it is, McDonald's, Sonic, or Chick-fil-A? And then you can click on one and then she'll respond back saying, actually, maybe it's Chick-fil-A, or, so there's a way that, you can sense that notification. But when I was going through it, I was like thinking, okay, I'm actually spending a lot in this area, but I thought that maybe it was lower or a different perspective. So it's great to be able to use this in a student's perspective, because a lot of times, what we think that we're spending on versus what we actually are. So her providing that notification and kind of testing you really allows to give the opportunity to see if you really know where your finances are at. Okay, so personal capital, this is an app to kind of keep in mind. It's just to kind of raise awareness about the app, and it really just depends on the client. So for example, you would really need to thoroughly explain this, especially if it was in a student's perspective, because what it does, it's a money management and looks at investment management as well. And it allows for you to kind of review transactions across all of your accounts. And it's kind of almost setting up basically a balance sheet. So it's focused on, how you can reduce your liabilities and maintaining a positive net worth. Students are curious about this app because they hear of it. But what we found, through some personal experience is that, as you're a student, you have a lot of student loan debt, and so it's kind of a negative standpoint at the beginning. And so, we don't want to discourage students from not pursuing, being proactive in their financial situation. And so when they see that, it could be a little kind of discouraging. So this app just basically, it's good to know over time what that means. But for the most part, it's an app to throw out there, but it really depends on the client situation.
All right, great. So Prism is a bill pay and tracking app, and mostly we recommend this to customers, as oftentimes customers come in and they have a history of being behind on. The 12th of the month passes by, they forget the bill is due that day. This is an app that will send you an automated response to remind you to pay the bill a week before, and then also the day the bill is due. Which is great. The valuable thing here is you can sign in with your login for these bills, and then it will tell you the exact amount that's due as well. You have the option of paying through the app, but we mostly recommend it for customers for a gentle nudge that a bill is due. But it is nice that customers can pay through an app. And if you pay via ACH, it's free. If you pay via credit card or debit card, there is a fee.
Great. This is an app that, I do like to promote to students just because, everybody's got a hectic life going on. They're trying to focus on exams and dealing with all their life activities. And so this is an app that I recommend. It helps the students kind of stay on track, and knowing that when their life gets busy, that having these notifications and reminders and having that possibly automatic, bill payment option, it's just something that's less stress for the student to have to think about, and one less thing for them to worry about is making sure that, did they pay their bills on time, and, not getting into financial trouble. So this kind of helps them stay on track. So the next couple apps that we're going to talk about are based on savings and goal planning. These are both great tools. Capital, it tracks the way that, tracks savings based on goal planning. And so when you sign in, that you'll identify a goal that you'd like to save for, and then you kind of think of a process that you want to be able to, how you want to start contributing towards that goal. The great way that it can track and help you save towards that goal is that there's different triggers to help you kind of establish how much that you want to contribute towards that goal. So you can do a fixed amount each month if you'd like, or you can sync this app to multiple features, and as you complete something, it might contribute towards your goal. So like, for example, if you want to sync this app to your Fitbit, and after so many steps, it could transfer from your checking account and contribute towards this goal. So it's really up to you on the different tools that you can use and how you want to manage that. Another example, you can sync it to a weather app, and when it gets to a certain temperature, you can go ahead and have that move from your checking to your savings goal. So it really also looks at, how fast you want to achieve that goal and what the motive behind it is. The funds are FDIC insured. The downside to using capital is that there's no interest accumulating over time. Some other things to think about with both of these apps is that, it is goal-based planning, and so also using SmartyPig as well, that, as interest could be accruing, that there could be tax forms along with that. So what we like about with capital is that, it's goal-based planning, and it's something that students can utilize. And so, to help them start establishing what goals are and help contributing towards these goals as well. So SmartyPig, it is kind of taking a break from the app world, but as of now, you can still use it on your computer. It was bought out, and so that got transferred over. And I believe at some point they'll come back with relaunching the app. But this was the original one before Capital came out. And what it is, it's a free online piggy bank for people saving for specific financial goals. So the same thing, you have to be able to identify a goal. And with SmartyPig, interest does accrue, like I've mentioned before. But the great thing about both of these apps is the notification and the accountability. In that, as you're achieving your goal, they send great little messages to inspire you to keep continuing on saving and what the impact has. What I also like to mention that both of these apps, that in the event that if you needed to access these funds, you can retrieve the funds at a fairly fast pace. So you would have to allow yourself 2 to 3 days. So if an emergency were to happen and you needed to access these funds, you just kind of have to be aware that it could take anywhere up to 2 to 3 business days to get these funds back into your account. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Chris. He has experience using Capital as well. And Chris, can you share some of your experience?
So I love using Capital. I love the way you can create your own fun rules. So for example, if you have a certain baseball team that you follow or something like that, and every time they play or every time they win, you can set up a rule. So I really enjoy that. Also, as Jen mentioned, you can tie it to a number of different applications, whether it's weather, whether it's Roundup, similar to what like all large banks are doing. And then I think they're coming out with a debit card, or they already have come out, so you can actually spend with the card. I don't know much about that piece, but I know that that's a new feature. And they might be doing some stuff with investing in the future as well. I don't know if you have anything about with the debit card, Jen.
Yeah, the debit card, I believe it's something that can be utilized, but there's also something that is tacked on with it, that as you're spending, you can also be saving as well. It's kind of a unique feature where if you find yourself spending on the same item over and over again and you're trying to work on cutting that cost, it can also contribute and move funds towards that savings goal as well. All right. So the next kind of savings app is relatively new. It's kind of bringing into the picture gamification. So this one is called Long Game. It's a savings-based app, but what it does is that you contribute X amount of dollars into an account through Long Game. And then the more that you contribute into this account, you retrieve coins. And as you gain those coins, you can go ahead and you can cash in those coins to play games within the app. Sometimes the game, it offers, like if you spin the wheel, you can receive more coins so you can keep playing, or you can receive a small monetary amount. And so there's little incentives to keep going. You can also set it up where, a fixed amount is going into the account. But the thing that I really liked about it was definitely, it encourages savings. But I also was thinking that maybe encouraging too much could also be a negative thing. What I found myself over time, which might not work for every client, but this could be a thing, is that I was constantly putting money in it because I'm personally competitive and I just wanted to keep playing the games. And then I found myself thinking, okay, maybe I need to take a break from this and just kind of have a fixed dollar amount go in a month and kind of pause and not be playing so much. So the games are kind of fun, but when you have those little incentives to either gain more coins or a small monetary amount, they have some drawings of each week. it's fun to keep going. And so, over time, it's great to keep the clients engaged with what they're doing, but at the end of the day, how much are they actually saving? And so, we don't want them to keep spending within the app, if that could even be a thing, and then having to keep dumping more money into it if they actually don't have a spending plan in set. And so want to make sure that they are saving regularly, but not too much where, they're not overplaying the games. I like to think of it as like a little mini Vegas. It was very interactive and it was a lot of fun. I will say, when I wanted to cash out and have the funds transferred to use, it took about 2 to 3 days, but it was still very active in transferring the funds over. So it's something to think about. It might not be for every client, but for the younger generation, this could be something engaging in terms of using games and savings.
All right, so speaking of using games to promote saving and spending tracking, I want to talk to you guys about Fortune City. So Fortune City basically is a game that gamifies expense tracking, and it kind of speaks to the Candy Crush. Like if you enjoy Candy Crush, you'll enjoy a game like this. So basically the idea behind it is you go out to lunch, during your workday, you buy lunch, you buy coffee, and maybe you pay for the subway to go home. So in tracking those 3 expenses, at the end of the day, you go home, you enter those 3 expenses into the app, and then it will give you money that you can use toward, or virtual money that you can use towards building out a little city. So sometimes you can build a hairdresser, sometimes you can build a barbershop, but as you continue to spend and track your spending, you can build this town and have residents in it who are thriving and all of that. So it's a fun way to encourage tracking of spending. But the one thing, the negative that I'll say about this game is if it encourages spending, because it lets you get kind of that virtual money for spending money. So the negative with that is you don't want someone to go out and just be spending because in order to build, or for customers to be entering fake expenses. It works best when you're just continue to do what you're doing, tracking your money via the app, and then and not embellishing there.
All right, and then with our last savings app we're going to highlight is Digit. Digit is a savings app that is a little bit different. I think that this is an app that's really great for people who may not be making consistent income, thinking of like a gig economy type, where 1 week you're earning one thing, 1 week you're the other. So, or especially with students who their income comes at ebbs and flows. This is a great app in that they have their algorithm and it evaluates your spending habits, and what it does is move small amounts of money from your checking into the Digit account based on that automatically every weekday. And if for some reason any automatic deposit were to cause someone to overdraft, they're so sure with their algorithm that they'll pay for that overdraft fee from the checking account. All the funds in Digit are FDIC insured, and then Digit also provides a bonus depending on how long you leave the savings there without being touched. They'll provide you bonuses, which can really add up depending on how much you've saved. So that could make up for the cost, because sadly the one thing about, I think it was July of last year, that they now began to charge $2 a month. And so that cost does affect the usage. I'm not sure if there was a decrease in participation for Digit, but I think it's a great tool for those who don't have consistent income, because it's using that algorithm to take these small amounts of money and move it over, especially when it's difficult for you to just say, hey, I need to save $20 a week. And when people are earning income inconsistently, that might be difficult. So having the calculations done for you is great through the use of Digit. Next, we're moving on to credit. And so credit, we're going to talk about these 3 main credit apps. 2 I'm sure you've heard of a lot and seen commercials for. First, we'll highlight Credit Karma. So Credit Karma provides you your Vantage Score report and your score. They pull information from both TransUnion and Equifax, I think the big important thing to be aware of is that those scores are for the Vantage score and not the FICO score. So the scores that you'll be seeing on these apps are going to differ from the score that, let's say, is pulled up from your bank or most banking or credit offering institutions, because they're most likely using the FICO score. And so that's not to be a big area of concern, but it's just more to be aware that, look, this is giving you a ballpark idea of where you're at. What I do like about Credit Karma as well is that they provide everything in kind of a letter grade. So when it comes to the 5 factors of credit, they'll let you know. It's like, oh, you have high debt, so you may have a C, or you pay on time and you pay all the time, every month on time, so you have an A there. So they'll give you a letter grade. So that's some of the good features about Credit Karma. With Credit Sesame, it's a freemium tool, so you give you 1 free score, but if you were to pay, they'll give you all 3 of the free scores. They provide you with just 1 of the credit bureaus, and the one thing that stands out from Credit Sesame that I like in comparison to Credit Karma, Credit Sesame has a home purchasing power tool. So one of the cool things is that it'll look at your credit report, and then you enter things like how much you earn, and some other pieces of data, and they'll tell you how much of a home they think you can afford, which is great for people who are looking at home ownership and you don't want to get into something that's beyond your means. And so that, I think, is one tool that stands out from Credit Sesame comparison to Credit Karma. And then NerdWallet has an app now, and they offer similar features that they'll provide you your TransUnion report. They provide you a number of educational resources, and also they provide a lot of offers. Again, all of these apps, the way they hook you is that they're going to provide you these offers for credit cards, but really just remember those are just like ads when you're looking at your computer, and that they're just there to tempt you. You don't have to get them. If you're pre-approved for an offer, make sure to let students or anyone know that that's not necessarily means you're really approved, and that they'll have to do a credit check and you could get denied. So try not to fall for those, but just be aware. But NerdWallet does have a lot of educational resources as well. Not sure if you want to add anything, Jennifer, to NerdWallet or any of the other apps.
I'll go ahead and add something really quickly. Only for NerdWallet, I wanted to say their app's actually expanded functionality a lot in the last few months. Where they started out with focusing mostly on credit, you can see them trying to become a jack of all trades app similar to Mint and Clarity Money. So now they offer more budgeting support and financial goal setting support, in addition to the credit and the educational resources. So it's been interesting to see them transform to serve a broader population, to serve more financial needs over the last few months.
I think my favorite feature out of the 3 is with Credit Karma. I really like the payment simulation on, just to reemphasize that what you mentioned before is that, if I pay this amount, this is what's going to happen. And if I pay, just the minimum payment, this is what's going to happen. And if I pay more, what could happen with my score? So I think just having that visual representation really helps people see the importance of, paying on time, and how the payment process is just so important within your credit score.
Yeah. You work tomorrow?
The one other thing I want to highlight, going back to that for a second, a question came through the chat. I know we're saving questions for the end, but I just want to address it really quickly, about auto purchasing power via the Credit Sesame app. I don't believe or know of I don't believe the app has that feature built in. Jennifer or Chris, can you correct me if I'm wrong?
No, the last time I checked it, it was just the home purchasing power. So
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, perfect. Cool.
All right, Acorns. Acorns is an investment type app. It's a great educational tool for for student learning about investments. It's a great opportunity for yourself if you're not sure where to start off at. It walks you through a risk tolerance assessment and kind of gets you set up with what kind of portfolio would be a great starting point. We've had, some of the students that I've had great feedback. They really enjoy it. What you do is, and after you set up your portfolio, then you figure out how often that you want to start contributing to this. And you can also do things such as invest a spare change. You can do a fixed amount. It's a great way to kind of, you can have that savings, but you can also kind of start to see the importance of investing early on. And it has great visual components that you can project out. It's not, it's not official, but at least shows, the importance of starting early and kind of seeing what that can do. There is a small fee for it. It's $1. But honestly, yeah, it is $1, but I haven't heard too many complaints about people not paying, like complaining about the dollar. But, I think they're just so involved with how this investment process works and kind of contributing and kind of having that independence. And so, the only downside to it is that this is not a tool that you want to stress to use an emergency fund, that you are investing in that. It does take time to process and selling and to get the funds back. So you need to kind of allow yourself at least 2 weeks to make sure everything is good to go and everything comes back into your account. The other thing that goes with Acorns is that, over time, if you've been investing for a while, that you have to keep an eye out for a 1099 dividend. And they do send it off pretty fast, but you have to, it is a small amount, or maybe if everything goes well, it could be a larger amount, but you still have to report it. And then the process of going through Acorns is, the second step of the tax process as well. So I recently just cashed in my Acorns account and felt like I kind of hit the next step in adulting. I got the opportunity to fill out a Schedule D of reporting all the different types of investment transactions that happened between the past 3 years of using Acorns. And so, you kind of just have to keep an eye out for that. You could receive some additional tax forms, and you just kind of have to be aware of everything. But for the most part, it's a great educational tool. There's the starting point. Not only, they're providing educational information on investments, they've also encouraged for students to get involved. So they do have some blogs and information on student loans. So they're trying to expand a little bit on the education piece. I think one of the students mentioned to me her favorite thing was that they have a YouTube link that led to all these different types of personal finance music videos that I didn't exist, and we showed them in class one time, and it was quite a hit for all of the students. So just great feedback. It's just a great educational platform if you're wanting to start looking into investing.
So now we're moving on to banking. So one of the, when I saw this app come out, it's called Simple. I took the big dive in using it, and eventually, little by little, moved away from brick and mortar banking. So Simple's an online bank that has an option for goal-based savings, budgeting, and transaction tagging. What I love about Simple is that both my budgeting and my banking is all together. So for example, if I were using Mint, I'd have to look at my budget on one page. And then if I needed to refer to how much money I had in the bank, I'd have to go to a Bank of America app, or my insert your bank app to check out those numbers. Here, it's all fused together in one place. What I like to as well is that rather than having your available balance or your pending balance because you're waiting for some transactions, what they do is they have your safe to spend. So after you take into consideration what you have allocated in all your budget items, plus or what expenses are coming up, plus what you all have in the total available balance, that then they'll have a number that's safe to spend. So after every other thing has been allocated, this is what's left that you can spend. So really, there are people who they'll say at the beginning of the when on payday, they'll be like so excited they have all this money, and then when you really think about it, oh, I have rent coming up, I have this bill, I have that bill. So that number that says available balance on your bank account isn't what is really available to you. So this takes that consideration. As of last week, they just opened up a new emergency savings account feature. So what it is that if let's say you over budget on one item, that sometimes they'll let you know, and then they'll have to take from one of the available budget items. Any money that you put into your emergency fund, they'll actually will not take money out of that. It's kind of like a little lockbox within your banking account with Simple. And so they will not touch anything that you put into your emergency savings account, which I thought was pretty neat. So that's just a brand new feature. But again, some people are really comfortable with their banks and their bank's features, and not trying to pull anyone a specific way, but really making sure that you're taking advantage of all the features that your bank has. So really making sure to download the apps that your bank most likely has, especially in this day and age. Credit unions, all of them have some type of an app available, and to definitely use it and learn more about what banking features your institutions have.
And just to kind of build off of that I think for a starting point, if you're not sure that you're ready to expand and try out some of these different financial apps, is to go ahead and see how comfortable you feel with using your own mobile banking app. And then if you find yourself, not having all the features within that app, to go ahead and expand out and maybe try out some of the apps that we've gone over today.
Yeah, I will add on to that as well. Many of the banks have expanded to include some of the features that some of the other apps you've mentioned have as well. So it's not unusual for there to be a budgeting tool where you can see what you're spending monthly via your online budget or your online banking app. So just kind of, their apps. I think banks are seeing that customers are turning to these apps and just now deciding that they want to build these features into their online banking where possible. Just something to keep in mind.
So for taxes, we have a few apps here that are related to tax time. IRS, many people can believe if you can't, they do have an app. And so it's IRS to go. And with that app, you can check your refund status. You're able to make payments if you have any, if you owe any funds to the IRS. You can look for your free VITA or free tax preparation program that's near your area, or there's a number of different tax tips, and it's available in 2 different languages, in English and Spanish. Everlance is useful for tax clients because what it does is it kind of helps people who, especially if they're self-employed, like if you have, it could be anything from working for Uber or something like that, or some type of other self-employment or sole proprietorship, or if you're just being paid a 1099 miscellaneous, you can use this to track your mileage. That does have a small fee tied to it, but you can also use it to take pictures of receipts for business-related expenses, and then it can all be stored at the app so that when you make that purchase, you've saved it automatically right there, and you can then pull reports at the end of the year that you need. So I think for nonprofit entities, you can actually email them and they'll give you, I think, a year of subscription for free. I can't remember the exact number, but I definitely know that for any nonprofit institution, you can go ahead and email them and you'll get the premium version or something like that. And then for Credit Karma, I think Jennifer has some information on Credit Karma because I actually have not used their tax product yet.
Oh, yeah. So just a couple of things, if your university or, wherever you're working at, if you are involved with a VITA site, some things that I've experienced is that, if you're a quality reviewer, the best time to introduce this app, is during that quality review session, because it's just natural for the taxpayers to think that, that we are the IRS. And so they just want to know when they're going to get their refund. And so it's helped our site a lot in terms of the phone calls, wondering where their refund is at. And so introducing that IRS to Go app has been an amazing experience. Second, there's a few ways that I can introduce this. There's always recommending people to go to their local VITA site. If they get to the VITA site and they realize that they're just above the income threshold, to continue on to the myfreetaxes.com through the United Way and H&R Block partnership. And then if you're still kind of above that threshold, to look at possibly using Credit Karma. Credit Karma, this is the 2nd year that they've used to tax services, and it is free. It's a great educational platform in terms of walking you through on how to file your taxes. I've had a great experience using it, and it's easily to understand. And I'm going to let Darren talk a little bit about his experience.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. So as was mentioned earlier in the presentation, I'm new to the financial clinic. I'm new to New York City. I recently moved from Miami, and this past year I attempted to do my taxes on Credit Karma and saw that there was a feature that was missing. They unfortunately don't do multi-state tax returns. So, I ended up then going back to look at my free taxes to see if they could accommodate me, and they did. But it's just kind of important to know that Credit Karma, this is their second year offering free tax preparation through their platform. But they're, of course, still building out features, and it looks like one of them that they're still building out is multi-state returns. So just kind of an important thing to keep in mind as you're looking. I will say I did use them to do my taxes last year, and I thought it was just as pleasant of an experience as my free taxes in very similar in format and function. All right, great. So, so speaking of the vetting process and how we kind of came to these apps, I mentioned a little bit earlier that we've looked at many apps throughout the few years that we've been doing this. Man, years, kind of crazy to think about. We've been talking about this for a while, but and we can kind of continue to remove and add things from our app selection list. There was a time when Personal Capital was removed, but then we recently added it back. SmartyPay was removed. We do our best to try to stay up to what we think will benefit our customers the most in the moments when they need it, and based on kind of market demand and need and goals and all of that. So just wanted to kind of highlight once again that we found the things that were most important for us when selecting apps. And I think if you're going to be using this with either students or customers or clients, you have to keep in mind what are those things for you, what will meet their needs, and then how you also make them aware of the positives and the negatives of using these apps as well.
All right, so when we send this out, I'm not sure how it's going to be sent out to the participants, but if it's a file, then here's all the links to all the apps that we have talked about today. And I just wanted to reinforce that, if you find yourself going through this presentation and you're thinking, I'm not real confident in introducing this to my clients, and that's absolutely fine. Just note that, you need to be on board with it to be able to promote and to educate your clients about it so they can fully get a grasp of it. And then also letting your clients know that they need to do additional homework as well and make sure that they understand that, things do change and that, it's hard to stay on top of all of this, but just to keep having that conversation between you and your client. If they are using the financial apps, how are they tracking their progress? Is it helping with their saving and spending behavior? So, we're going to go ahead and move on to questions. And so once again, thank you for joining us. And we appreciate the time that you've taken out of your day. And we will go ahead and proceed to any questions that you may have.
All right, so it looks like a few questions came through the chat while we were presenting. If it works for everyone, I'll read a few of the comments and questions that have come through. Unless Amina, you were going to play that role, I'm happy to.
Yeah, well, I think maybe I did take note of a couple of questions that came up, so we can play it by ear, and if there's anything else that I missed that you might have read in the chat box, that works as well. But I think one good question that I personally also have is, what are some ways or suggestions that you would have for us to use in complementation of the coaching that we do with our clients and our students? So how do we, how are we mindful of not just suggesting for them to use the app and actually use the apps to complement the work that we do with them?
I think the best way to start is that you beta test it yourself and you personally kind of go through a series of apps, maybe on some common things that you've noticed in terms of coaching and working with students or clients. And if you see any common patterns and if there's an app that can supplement that, to go ahead and try it out yourself. I feel like that's given me a great segue to have these conversations, to educate students. We've trained our coaches here at Tech on, how to introduce this, but the best way is to take some time and to go through some of them that might work for you so that you can kind of help explain and to see what your clients are going through.
Great, thank you. And I think another question that just came up at the end also was if you have any particular suggestions for students who don't want or feel like they don't really need any bank accounts. And I know you had Simple as one of the sort of virtual banking options. But would you have any additional suggestions for students who don't want any bank accounts?
So that's a good question. I've been looking at recently a few different apps that, for maybe folks that either don't want banking or they can't qualify for a bank account because they're listed in check systems. We've been looking at a few different prepaid debit card options and to see, are they low fee, are the apps usable? So I don't have too much to report yet, but there's like two in particular that I've been potentially considering, but I think it's too soon for me to announce what they are because they haven't been fully vetted. But it's something that we're keeping in mind.
Yeah, great. And another question's coming in that's really kind of relevant. So do you, have you come across any apps that may be more specific for college students? I think you mentioned there was an app, Digit. I think that accommodates to fluctuating income that may be good for students, but do you have anything else that may be more specific to that lifestyle of and priorities that college students may have?
Yeah, so the most popular one when I get feedback from students is that they're aware of Mint. There are some challenges with Mint though, because it doesn't automatically categorize all of your expenses right away. So you have to hold yourself accountable to go back in on a monthly basis and make sure everything is prioritized correctly. But I think starting off with just their own personal mobile app through their bank is a great place to start and getting used to the functions of that. And if they find out, if something's not working for them or they want more features such as bill pay, then they can expand out. I say the second app that, there's probably top three that I would say that are popular within students. The second one, definitely Credit Karma, just because there's a lot of media around it and it's quite popular. So I do get a lot of questions off of that, but it's no good if you don't understand the foundation of what credit is and what all those terms mean. So it can also be a tool that isn't helpful for them, but they are curious about it because they see it and they're wanting to learn more. And then lastly, just getting a lot of student feedback on using Acorns. It is getting more popular. And so kind of going through that. But once again, it's an app, but if you don't understand the foundations of investment, it's not a helpful tool as well. So my concern is that, it's important with education and awareness and making sure that they even understand the basics. So if they're not financially literate or don't understand their own personal financial situation, the app is not going to replace that. They still need to understand themselves and their spending and saving behavior before they do that. Because the app's not really going to fully fix it if they don't understand what's going on for themselves. The app is just a tool there to help guide you and navigate you to that next step.
And I'll add on to what Jennifer's saying. So while Chris and I were at Catalyst Miami, we were piloting most of these apps. Around 40% of our client base was community college students from Miami-Dade College. So there is a big precedent in students wanting to use and try out these apps and trying them. But we also realize that they're not all specifically built for students, but they can benefit them. And then one other app I wanted to highlight, it isn't a mobile app, but there's an organization called MoneyThink that has an app that focuses on doing virtual financial coaching via a platform. They mostly work with low-income community college students. We also looked at partnering with them, but they're not at the app space yet, but they do have a very, very cool web tool that they're in the process of developing.
Thank you. And then there's one more, there's a couple questions actually that speak to maybe concerns, security concerns and the requirement of many of these apps to link our bank accounts to the app. Do you know or could speak a little bit more to that? And also if you have any suggestions or recommendations of apps that help us budget but don't require us to link our bank accounts.
Sure. I'll speak to the security piece really, really briefly. So the thing that we always try to highlight for customers is all of these apps are read only. So like while you do sign in with login information from your bank account, they only have the ability to read your transactions, and usually they have about a 3-month statute of limitations with the amount of transaction data that they can actually store. Some of them is a little bit longer, sometimes up to a year or a few years, but they can't make transfers from your account to somewhere else without your permission. So, and similar to that, I highlighted earlier that all the apps use bank level security. And, we highlight that to customers, and we've seen that customers tend to trust their financial coaches and what their financial coach is saying. So if we ever hear of anything negative happening with any of these apps, or if we hear of a fee being charged, we immediately make an edit to the handout that we give, so customers know what those changes and updates are. And then to the second part of the question, so not all of the apps require you to log in with your online banking information. An example of that would be, so Fortune City, for that game, you don't have to, for the gamification portion of it, you don't have to log in with your bank. You can track your transactions that way. In addition to that, most of them have, or some of them have the ability, like for Mint, you technically could use it without signing with your online banking. You could just like enter every single transaction that you do. But the negative to that is, or I guess I'll say the positive is automation. When things are automated, it makes things very, very easy for customers to just kind of drop it and forget it and check in on it when they've accomplished it. When you add another task to their to-do plate and you already have limited bandwidth, it can become demotivating if they forget. So that's why we tend to lean hard on apps that do focus on the automation.
Yeah, it reduces that error process of just accidentally forgetting to input something or not really sure, or if you're working with the client, if they're not, inputting all the information, or they just happen not to want to input something because they don't want to share that. So there's some accountability with that automatically get rolled over into the app to kind of see that. I believe that's really helpful for the client to understand that.
Great, thank you so much. I think in the interest of time, I am going to thank Jennifer, Darren, and Chris for an amazing presentation, and I'm going to hand it off to Phil for the last final words before we log out.
I mean, that's pretty much it. I just want to thank you again to Jennifer, Chris, and just thank you very much for doing the presentation here. I don't know why forgot to say Darren, but Jennifer, Chris, and Darren, thank you very much for doing the presentation here. Just so everybody knows, the presentation will be available on the HEFWA website here shortly. We'll upload a copy of the presentation as well as the webinar too, so you'll be able to access that. If you do have any other questions, please feel to reach out to us just at info@hefwa.org. And again, please check out our website if you haven't already registered for the summit. If you want to find out more information about it, just go to www.hefwa.org. With that, thank you again for joining us, and we'll stay tuned, I guess, for an announcement about our next webinar. Thank you very much.